Hello, and welcome to Vets Remember. I'm your host, Craig Yamauchi, and I have been very honored today by being visited by Mr. Morris Cramer. He is the father of Ron Cramer, Eau Claire Sheriff, and I was really impressed by this gentleman, as spry as he is at 85. I just wish that I could be that when I'm that age. He was in the U.S. Navy, and he was in World War II, and he had made it to all the way to the rank of petty officer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. Mr. Cramer. Two last names, it's kind of tough. To explain to us his story, his history, because it is a part of the Western Wisconsin history. It's a part of Eau Claire history, and it's something that everybody has got to know. This one is especially fascinating because this involves a torpedoing of a destroyer that he was on. And so I'm going to hand the reins over to Mr. Cramer so that he can explain to us his ventures into the United States Navy. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I have some photographs here of Morris Cramer. This is that fine-looking young gentleman here. And his brother is Laverne. And he also has another brother that was named Wayne Cramer. They were all in the Navy. And were you, Mr. Cramer, the only one that served in the war itself?
No, the other two boys also.
They did?
Yes.
Okay, and when you were in the Navy, when you first went in, what year was that?
1939.
And, oh, the war hadn't even begun, except for over in Europe.
Right.
Okay, and what motivated you to go into the Navy anyway?
Well, my father was a sailor, and I grew up listening to stories about the Navy, and he was in the German Navy.
Oh, okay.
And he became a citizen then of the United States in later years.
Uh-huh.
And that motivated me to want to be like your dad.
Oh, absolutely. He must have been a great influence on you.
He was. And it was during the Depression years, and so it was not easy to get a job. And so the Navy was really my first job.
Uh-huh.
And it paid $33 a month.
Wow. Well, actually, you know, that was pretty good compared to a lot of people didn't even get, what is it, they were working for like $1 a day or 50 cents a day.
Yes.
With a lot of the work that they were doing, a lot of it was back-breaking work too.
Yes, it was.
And so you got just over $1 a day, and you were served in the Navy, and you got your 3 squares and a cot, so to speak, for a while. And I saw a photograph of your wife in your hat, and I was quite impressed with it earlier because what I had done is I had commented to Mr. Cramer what good taste he had. And this photograph is the photograph of his wife. At that time, you weren't married to her, is that correct?
No, no, not at that time.
And she was working at the Boeing plant in Washington. And I made the comment, what a good-looking lady. And, you know, and of course I told him he had great taste. And I know taste, I really do. And his son, of course, is the result of these two beautiful people. And when you went into the Navy, where did you take your boot camp at?
Great Lakes Naval Station.
In Chicago?
Yes.
And how long did that last?
At that time, they had reduced it because the war was on in Europe at the time, or it was starting. And so they started pushing it through, and I think I was there about 3 months, and then graduated, and then they sent us out in the fleet, so to speak. And I was sent to Washington, state of Washington, Bremerton, Washington, and I went aboard the USS New Mexico, a battleship. And I served on that until about 2.5 years, because at that time we left the Hawaiian waters, and we were in Hawaii, and nobody wanted to leave Hawaii, but
I don't blame them.
and we ended up going through the Panama Canal, and we ended up in Reykjavik, Iceland, because the German battleships were running around the North Atlantic at the time and raising havoc with shipping. And
Yes, they
so
were.
that was our job to.
So you were doing escort for the supply ships?
Yes, the convoys that were going to. At that time, the convoys were going to Ireland and up in that place because they weren't going into England. And in fact, I never was in England. I made a lot of trips across the Atlantic, but not to England. It was always.
Well, England at that time was heavily bombarded by the
were.
German Air Force.
Yes.
And so they didn't dare take the supply ships that far in.
Right. And even in Ireland at the time, if you would be on the beach at night on our leave from the ship Liberty, they had bomb shelters all over Ireland. And at night, everything was blacked out. And so you had to be careful. And of course, you had crime there too. Of course,
Oh, I suppose you
crime
would, sure. You know, that never escapes anybody, no matter under what circumstances, unfortunately. And you served on the USS New Mexico, and then you went aboard the Bristol, is that correct?
Yes. I happened to go to the hospital, and I had pneumonia. And at that time, the Japanese attacked the United States at that time. And the ship I was on, the battleship, in the fog, rammed a freighter and had to repair a large part of the bow of the battleship. And they transferred me then to New York for assignment, and I ended up going on the USS Bristol. And I served in that until I lost it in 1943.
Okay. And when you got aboard the Bristol, was that in New York at the time?
Yes, it was in dry dock.
And you were, the Bristol had sailed over to the Mediterranean?
Yeah, well, we were doing some convoy work along the east coast, because the German submarines were quite, well, they were sinking a lot of our shipping. They were in our shipping lanes. And at that time, as history will tell you, people seen these ships, and Liberty ships were come about, and Kaiser built the Liberty ships, which became very popular. And of course, they were couldn't take a torpedo. They had no armament, and the people in the Jersey coast and that coast could see them sinking at the time. And so, as a result, the war, we were waiting for England to get prepared. Of course, we were already bombing in England, and they were, as history will tell you, we lost a lot of planes, our Boeing bombers, and
that was what, the B-25s, and then they came out?
B-17s.
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 And when you were in the shipping lanes, was that in the North Atlantic, did that run straight across from New York, or did you have to go further north?
We went further and took the global route.